Hi, welcome to the very first video of the GMO channel. The goal of this channel is to inform and educate people about GMOs through a series of short videos. Some of them will be a little bit longer, like this one will be about 20 minutes. In the future, the videos will be less than 5 minutes. And we will cover a whole bunch of topics like the GMO technology itself, the health risks, environmental effects, politics, and regular news and updates. This is a feedback-oriented channel, so please tell us what specific topics you would like us to cover and if you would like us to do something different. Briefly about me, I'm the author of Deconstructing Monsanto, an ebook. It's available on Amazon, iTunes, and also Smashwords. I'm originally from India. I live in San Francisco Bay Area. And as you know, in India, more than 100,000 farmers have committed suicide because they went bankrupt because of Monsanto. I love to travel. I've been to more than 30 different countries in the world. I'm passionate about health and food and also politics. Here's a picture of me from Egypt. So, a couple of months ago, I spoke at the rally for March Against Monsanto in San Francisco, and I spoke about creating a network of food warriors. So this GMO channel is one of the tools in creating that network of well-informed individuals who could go and talk to others about GMOs. Okay, so why should we act now? Currently, more than 90% of soy, corn, sugar beets, canola, papaya, and cotton are GMOs, which also translates to more than 80% of all the packaged processed food that you would find in a supermarket. Everything has high fructose corn syrup or protein from soy and sugar from sugar beets, or if you go to a restaurant, most of the restaurants they use canola oil or corn oil or soy oil to cook. So we cannot, or it's very hard to escape GMOs. And these were introduced only in 1996. So as you can see, just in a matter of 17 years, they've gone from 0% to practically 100% of the major crops. And if we don't do something, within the next 15 years, every single major plant or fruit or crop that we have will be genetically modified. Around the world, 1 billion acres of land now have GMOs and is growing very, very rapidly, has tripled since 2007. And if you look at Amazon, the jungle, the forest, the land in South America, it's called the lungs of the earth because 30% of all the oxygen in the earth come from Amazon. And that wonderful piece of nature is being destroyed to grow GMO soy and corn. 130,000 square kilometers. That's about the size of California. That's being destroyed every year to grow GMOs. So you replace this most complex, most biodiverse, most ecologically diverse, wonderful thing that has been around for hundreds of millions of years by these fake genetically modified monoculture. Okay, now we'll take a look at GMOs in a nutshell. GMOs stand for genetically modified organism. The adjective modified is such a PR term because in reality, what's being done to the plants are mutations. So it should be called genetically mutated organism. GMOs are very different from hybrids. Hybrids are, for example, if you take two kinds of apples and you create a hybrid and you get a third apple. GMOs are transgenic. So, for example, they have taken genes from a frog and put that in a tomato, or they've taken genes from a fish and put that in a strawberry. And in the most common GMOs, what they have done is to take genes from different types of bacteria and put them into the plants, like soy, corn, potato, and all of that. But going back to hybrids, even hybrids are not always safe. For example, people have been super hybridizing wheat for the last few decades. And they did that so they could make the height of the wheat plant really short. That makes it easier for the farmers to harvest, and also to increase a little bit of gluten, so the food industry saves a lot of time when they have to prepare bread and muffins and all of that. But what happened? We have a huge gluten problem. But nobody wants to talk about why we have the gluten problem when human beings have been eating wheat for thousands of years. There are two major types of GMOs, and you have to really understand this very well. The first type is the GMOs actually produce pesticide. The plant becomes a pesticide factory. Every single cell in the plant produces pesticide day in and day out. The second type of GMOs are plants that have become herbicide tolerant or herbicide resistant. What this means is that they can spray these really toxic, horrendous chemicals, herbicides in the farms, and everything would die except for the GMOs. So here's a picture that shows how they take the gene of a bacteria. It's called Bacillus thuringiensis. The short form is BT. So when they take this specific bacteria and put that in a plant, it's called the BT plant. So it would be BT corn, BT soy, and so on. And this technology has basically led to us having pesticides and herbicides for meals. Because BT cannot be washed off. It's built into the plant. It's built into every cell. When they use the herbicide-resistant GMOs, for example, they use Roundup, which is made by Monsanto. And Roundup is systemic, meaning that it goes into the plant. It goes into the bloodstream of the plant. It's called the sap. When they spray Roundup, it goes from the leaves into the plant. So you cannot wash off Roundup. That is our Monsanto's salad dressing. Now, the main component of Roundup is called glyphosate. And glyphosate was supposed to be biodegradable. So in the 1980s and the 90s, Monsanto lied to us saying, oh, don't worry about Roundup, it's just biodegradable, so it will never go into your body. But what's happening is when people are tested for glyphosate in their blood, in their urine, scientists find huge amounts of glyphosate. So this year in 2013, the EPA just raised the allowed concentration or the amount of Roundup in the food by 30 times. So this shows that Roundup is not biodegradable, Roundup is not harmless. Now, the question may be, if GMOs have so many problems, how come they have become so prevalent? There are some legal gotchas that we will go through right now. First is GMOs are patented. For example, the BT crops, they're not even considered as plants. They're actually registered with the EPA as pesticides. And because of the patent laws in the US, it's very hard for the scientists, the professors, and all of those people to actually study the GMOs because Monsanto will come and sue them. And there have been absolutely no long-term studies done on animals by these biotech firms, and no human studies at all. The only test that Monsanto did back in the 1990s was a study with a bunch of rats for 90 days, and then they did not even show us all the results. They selectively showed the results to the FDA, which was at that time run by an ex-vice president of Monsanto. So he just gave approval to everything that they came up with. There's also another term that they created. It's called substantially equivalent. So on one hand, Monsanto went to the courts and said, oh, the GMOs are very, very different from a normal plant. There's nothing in common. And actually, we are registering that as a pesticide. So we need a patent. Then the next day they came to the FDA, which was run by their ex-vice president, and they said, hey, there is no difference between a GMO and a normal plant. So they basically talked through both sides of their mouth, and they got the substantial equivalence for the GMOs. They also got them exempted from Delaney Clause, which is an old law that said that if something is carcinogenic, it cannot be in the food. So GMOs can cause cancer, and the FDA will not do anything about it. Let's take a look at some of the health risks associated with. So here is a map of the obesity rate in America in 1996. As you can see, there was not one single state that had obesity rate above 20%. Now, fast forward to 2011. By 2011, the situation became the exact opposite. There was not one single state that had obesity rate below 20%. Take a look at diabetes. As you can see, they were kind of stagnant or a very mild growth until a certain year, after which it started to skyrocket. What was that year? 1996, when GMOs were introduced. Food allergies are also very well-known problems of GMOs. But when you think about it, humans being allergic to food is like your computer being allergic to electricity. It's really stupid. And of course, we know that there are millions of Americans suffering from corn, soy, wheat allergies. And the number of people who have to go to the hospital for food allergies have tripled in the last decade. The National Health Survey added a special section for food allergies for the very first time in 1997. So the government knew that GMOs were going to cause food allergy. So the biotech companies have borrowed the playbook from tobacco companies from the 1960s and the 70s. Number one is to completely deny that there's anything wrong with their product. And number two, pay off a couple of scientists to come forward and say that they are safe. And then number three, if somebody else finds the truth, just attack them. So there are tons and tons of studies on GMOs and Roundup and Bt pesticide, and most of them are done outside the US because of the patent laws that we discussed before. And there are lots of studies in my book that you can refer to. I have all the links in the chapters in my book, but here are some quick overviews of the major studies. This study from 2012, done by a famous French scientist, Serolini, shows that GMOs cause tumors in rats and mice. In a 2009 study, it was shown that GMOs cause kidney and liver damages in rats. In a 2013 study from Brazil, the Bt, the pesticide produced by the Bt crops, they are actually shown to kill red blood cells and bone marrow cells, causing leukemia. In a 2010 Russian study, they gave GMOs to 3 generations of hamsters. And by the time it was the third generation, they had very slow growth, they could not reproduce, the fertility rate went down, the mortality rate went up. There have been lots and lots of studies done on Roundup, partly because it's so easy to buy and you can do the tests. It has been consistently shown to cause birth defects, just like Agent Orange. It has been shown to kill human cells and disrupt a human enzyme called aromatase. And when you disrupt aromatase, that causes breast cancer. Actually, this has been shown to be the case in many different herbicides. For example, there is an herbicide made by Syngenta that also causes breast cancer. Roundup disrupts endocrine glands in humans. It kills beneficial intestinal flora. We have trillions and trillions of bacteria in our intestine, and they play a huge role in our health. So when Roundup disrupts the intestinal flora, the intestinal bacteria, that has been consistently shown to lead to gastrointestinal disorders, obesity, diabetes, autism, infertility, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. For example, when they studied the autistic kids, they consistently have huge problems with their digestive system. And Roundup has an enormous effect, an enormous negative effect on the intestinal bacteria. Another study that showed specifically that Roundup causes DNA damage in human cells. And what happens when DNAs get damaged? It leads to cancer. This slide shows the shocking truth of the current state of our food industry. We spray toxic, dangerous chemicals that people cannot breathe or touch onto our food, which we eat later on. And pesticides are also very dangerous, as you can see from the sign. When they spray pesticides, they tell you not to go into the farm. But of course, later on, suddenly it becomes completely okay for us to actually eat it. As Dr. David Suzuki put it succinctly, any politician or scientist who tells you that GMO products are safe is either very stupid or lying. Okay, let's take a quick look at the negative environmental effects of GMOs. First is GMOs are resulting in superweeds and superbugs. 43 different types of weeds have become resistant to Roundup in the US, and that's almost half of the agricultural land in America. Many pests have also become Bt resistant. So what's the solution? They have to come up with more toxic and more dangerous herbicides and pesticides. We're now using 1 billion pounds of toxic pesticides every year, and that has been going up thanks to GMOs. And you might have heard of this. We have a huge problem with colony collapse disorder. Just this past winter, 40% of the bees, they died. So what do? They bring in millions and millions and millions of bees from Australia and from China. It's the most ridiculous thing. So in Europe, they have actually temporarily banned some of the pesticides to see if that makes a difference. But here, thanks to the FDA and the EPA, which are all filled with ex-biotech employees, they're just refusing to do anything. And of course, 1/3 of all our food, they come from bees. And without bees, we'll have a huge problem. But it's also more than just honeybees. They kill so many other beneficial and good bugs that are farmers' best friends. For example, monarch butterflies, their population has been going down precipitously. Ladybugs, bumblebees, earthworms, they're all susceptible to pesticides and herbicides, and they all die. And also, these chemicals affect the microbes in soil, the delicate ecosystem in the soil. So I call this slide Symphony of Soil based on an upcoming documentary. Check it out. But there is so much going on in the soil that affects the health of the plant, the nutrition that is found in the plant, and all the other living beings that make up the ecosystem. And these herbicides and pesticides, they just completely destroy the microbes in the soil, which affects everything else. GMOs basically lead to monoculture. What it means is that you grow one crop, one plant for thousands of acres all year around. It completely goes against the farming methods that work the best. When you grow different types of crops based on the season, you grow different types of crops based on the soil, based on the weather, based on the region, that creates biodiversity, which is good for the environment, which is good for everything in the environment. The soil, the plants, the bugs, the birds, the human beings. And GMOs, they do the exact opposite. And because you grow the same plant over and over, they become so weak that the farmers have to buy more and more pesticides and more herbicides and more fertilizers because weak plants are going to attract the pests. Weak soil is going to attract more weeds. GMOs, as we saw before, is also leading to an enormous amount of deforestation, which is bad for the whole world. This slide speaks for itself. So the way that Monsanto and their biotech buddies have been able to pull a fast one on us is by corruption at all levels. This itself would have to be another separate video on the GMO channel in the near future. Thanks to our legal system, corruption can be done in an open manner these days through lobbyists and front groups. These front groups with heartwarming names like the Center for Food Integrity, Global Harvest Initiative, Alliance to Feed the Future, all they are public relations firms, and they are lobbying groups that would raise money for the right politician. They would place the right people in the FDA, the USDA, the EPA, who would just rubber stamp the biotech agenda. Here is a Venn diagram that you might have seen before. This shows how influential Monsanto is. People come directly from the board of directors or from their labs or from their legal department or from their marketing and sales department, and they go on to become senators and politicians and bureaucrats, and they just carry out whatever Monsanto needs to get done. So, if there is one person that you need to remember, that's Michael Taylor. This guy has been going through the revolving door so many times that it makes your head spin. He started at the FDA as a lawyer, went to Monsanto, came back, and he did all the biddings of Monsanto for a few years in the early 1990s, and then he got rewarded as a vice president, and then he came back. So it doesn't matter if you have Democrats or Republicans. The biotech firms and the big agricultural firms are fully in charge. If you go to Monsanto's website right now, they would claim themselves to be an agricultural company. But in reality, it's a chemical company to its core. It has been around for more than 100 years, and it has been constantly peddling with really, really dangerous, out of mainstream chemicals. In the 1940s and 50s and 60s, they sold DDT all over the country, all over the world, claiming it was safe. Later on, it was found to be extremely bad for the environment that DDT was banned. But even this day, they're still finding the breakdown components of DDT in lakes and ponds around the country. Monsanto also sold PCBs, which got banned later on. Monsanto told us that Agent Orange was a wonderful thing to be used in Vietnam because it only killed the trees. It had absolutely no effect on human beings. Far from it, as you know. Monsanto also made RBGH, which is the bovine growth hormone that people have been giving to cows that makes the udders enormously sickly huge and forces the cows to give 5 times, 6 times the amount of milk that a normal cow would give. Monsanto also makes aspartame, the fake sugar that gets put into all kinds of products. And their latest venture is, of course, GMOs. Here is a picture of a cow that had been given Monsanto's bovine growth hormone. If you are not drinking organic milk, that's the kind of cow that your milk is from. And here are some of the children affected by Agent Orange, which when Monsanto sold to the government, they told the government that Agent Orange is completely harmless. Completely harmless. It will only kill the trees and it will have no effect on human beings. Okay, say that to hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese children and also the children of the Vietnam War veterans when they came back home. So, what can we do? Two things. One is we have to change what we eat and what we buy. So, whenever you can, buy organic. Organic vegetables, organic fruits, organic meat, and go buy from the farmer's market. There's no need for the food to travel thousands of miles before we eat it. It's not fresh, it's loaded with pesticides and herbicides and fungicides, and it's not even nutritious. And try to start a little garden. Even if you have a small house, even if you live in an apartment, you can grow some herbs. And obviously, we all have to cook more because that's the best way and that's the only way for you to know what you are eating. And number two is to get involved. There are lots and lots of grassroots movements all over the country right now. And you can join several groups in Facebook, and there are lots of really good websites. So get involved, find some people in your area, and this is the way to make a difference. Yes, eating organic is like giving Monsanto the finger. So, to recap the urgency of acting right now, GMO wheat is about to get started in Australia in large scale. GMO rice, eggplants, and bananas are being pushed in India by the US government, trying to force India to accept it. GMO potatoes are trying to come back, although they were huge failures back in the 1990s. GMO alfalfa will pretty much get approved by the FDA, and soon all our grass fed cows will be eating GMO grass. GMO salmon, GMO trees, GMO mosquitoes. If we don't do anything within the next 20 years, every major plant and even animals and fish could all be GMOs. So thank you once again. Hope you learned some useful information from this video. Let us know what you would like to see as the next topic. And if you like the video, please share it on the social media. And until next time, have a non-GMO day. Goodbye.